The doors of the high-end bank opened with a soft chime. A tall, well-dressed black woman stepped inside. Her name was Naomi. She walked slowly, calmly, holding a leather folder in one hand and a small briefcase in the other. Her heels clicked softly on the shiny marble floor. Her clothes were neat, elegant, but not flashy. Her hair was tied back simply, her jewelry small and quiet. She looked like a woman with purpose, a woman who knew where she was going. But inside the bank, the staff didn't see that. They saw something else. The manager, a man named Greg, leaned toward one of his team and whispered, "She's probably lost. Maybe she's looking for the community center." The teller laughed lightly and looked away. Naomi walked over to the waiting line. There were only a few people ahead of her. She didn't rush. She stood still, hands folded, her face calm. But the eyes around her were not calm. A young banker behind the desk glanced at her and made a face. "She doesn't look like a client," he whispered to his coworker. "Did someone leave the back door open?" They both chuckled. Naomi heard the whispers. She saw the glances. She noticed how they greeted other customers with big smiles, but didn't even say hello to her. Still, she waited. Minutes passed. A spot at the front desk opened up, but no one called her. A man behind her was invited forward instead. Naomi took a step forward, but the manager stepped in front of her. "I'm sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "This section is for clients only." Naomi looked him in the eyes. She didn't frown. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "I am a client." Greg raised an eyebrow. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," she said quietly. "Then I'm afraid we can't help you today," he replied. "This bank serves a certain level of clientele." He looked her up and down, not at her face, but at her shoes, her briefcase, her skin. "Maybe you're looking for another branch," he added with a smirk. Naomi didn't answer. She looked at the wall behind him. It had the bank's logo in gold letters. Then she looked at the glass windows, the fancy coffee machine, the white orchids on the table. She didn't say a word. She gave a small nod and turned to leave. The security guard held the door open for her, also without a word. Outside, the sunlight hit her face gently. She stood still for a moment. From behind the glass, the staff inside thought they had won. They laughed, thinking she had left in shame. But Naomi wasn't ashamed. She looked up at the sky, took a slow breath, and walked to the black car parked at the corner. The driver stepped out quickly and opened the door for her. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked. Naomi smiled gently, but her eyes were cold. "Perfect," she said. "I saw all I needed to see." As she stepped into the car, she placed the folder on her lap and opened it. Inside were documents, important documents, ownership papers, reports, internal memos. At the top of the page was the name of the very bank she had just walked out of. She stared at it for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. "Good afternoon," she said to the person on the other end. "Schedule a surprise visit for tomorrow. I'll be inspecting my branch personally." There was silence. Then the voice replied, "Yes, Mom. Shall I alert the manager?" Naomi's voice turned cold. "No, let them be surprised." She hung up and looked out the window as the car drove off. Inside the bank, Greg and his team were still laughing, still judging, still blind. They had no idea. No idea who had just walked out. No idea who she truly was. But tomorrow, they would know. They would all know. The next morning, the staff at the bank arrived like any other day. Greg, the manager, wore his sharp blue suit. His shoes were polished, his tie perfect. He walked in like a king entering his castle. "Big meetings today," he said loudly. "Let's make sure we only entertain serious clients." His team laughed. The same team that had mocked Naomi the day before. They didn't know. Not yet. At exactly 9:02 a.m., the main door opened quietly. A black car parked outside. Naomi stepped in. This time, she wasn't carrying a folder. She was followed by two sharply dressed men in dark suits. They didn't say a word. Their presence alone was enough to make people pause. Greg looked up. For a moment, he froze. Then he walked forward, forcing a smile. "Ma'am, can I help you?" he asked, pretending not to remember her. Naomi didn't smile back. "No," she said softly, "but I'm here to help you." Greg's smile faded. Before he could respond, one of the men beside her stepped forward and handed Greg a sealed envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "Your formal report," the man said, "from the board." Greg's eyes went wide. The board. Another man walked in from behind. An older gentleman with silver hair and a sharp gaze. He looked around the lobby slowly. "Is this how you run the place, Greg?" the man asked. "Mocking clients, ignoring people based on how they look." I didn't know," Greg stammered. "She didn't look like." The older man held up a hand. "Stop." Then he turned to Naomi. "Ma'am, your father built this bank with honor, and you've carried his name well." The staff gasped. Greg's hands began to shake. "Wait," he said. You're the owner." Naomi turned her calm gaze to him. "I'm the majority shareholder," she said. "I own this branch, and 7 more. The room fell silent. You could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Greg swallowed hard. The staff stared at Naomi in shock. Suddenly, she wasn't just the quiet black woman they ignored yesterday. She was their boss, their top boss. Naomi stepped forward, her heels clicking slowly on the floor. She looked at the exact spot she had stood the day before, then at the desk where Greg had blocked her. She turned back to the staff. "I walked in yesterday as a client. I was treated like I didn't belong." No one spoke. Naomi continued. "Some of you laughed. Some of you looked away. None of you asked how you could help me. And not one of you saw the woman behind the clothes." She took a slow breath. "But here's the truth. Respect doesn't start with money. It starts with character." The older gentleman nodded. "Well said." Naomi looked at Greg. "Clear your desk. You're done here." Greg's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He lowered his head. "And as for the rest of you," Naomi added, turning to the team, "there will be interviews, background checks. We will rebuild this branch with dignity." She turned to leave, but paused, then looked back one last time. "Next time a woman walks in looking different, remember this day." And with that, she walked out. Silence stayed behind, but respect had entered. The woman they disrespected now owned the floor they stood on, and for the first time, they truly saw her. The next day, the bank was different. Quiet, tense, nervous. Every staff member sat straight at their desks. Phones rang, but voices were softer. Everyone was waiting for her. Naomi, the woman they had judged, the woman who owned the bank. She arrived at 10 a.m. sharp. This time, she wore a dark blue business suit. No folder, no briefcase, just calm power in her eyes. She didn't speak much. She just walked straight into the glass conference room, the same room where staff were once never allowed. The staff exchanged looks. "Is she really going to fire all of us?" Someone whispered. "No idea," another muttered. "But I've never seen Mr. Clark that serious." Mr. Clark, the silver-haired board member, was already inside, waiting with 2 other executives. Naomi sat down at the head of the table. She looked around. Her voice was calm but strong. "Let's begin." One by one, the staff members were called in. Some sat nervously. Some switted. Some tried to explain. But Naomi only had one question for each. How do you treat people when you think no one is watching? That question hit like lightning. One young teller started crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "I followed Greg because I was scared. I laughed even when I didn't want to." Naomi looked at her, not with anger, but with something deeper. Fear is no excuse for cruelty, she said gently. But honesty, that's the first step to change. She made a note. Next came the assistant manager. He sat tall, arms crossed. I didn't say anything rude, he argued. That's not my job. Naomi leaned forward. And when you saw someone being disrespected, you looked away. That's worse. He had no answer. The interviews went on for hours. Some begged. Some blamed others. A few admitted their wrongs. But Naomi never raised her voice. She just listened, watched, took notes. When the last interview was over, she stood up. I know who I'll keep, she said, and who must go. Mr. Clark nodded. It's your call, he said. You've earned it. Naomi looked through the glass walls at the people outside. Some of them had called her names in whispers. Some had laughed at her old shoes. Now they waited for her word. She stepped out of the room. Everyone stood. No one dared speak. She walked to the center of the room. And then she said, This bank was built on my father's name. But I'm not here to rule with fear. I'm here to restore what this place lost, respect. The room stayed quiet. Naomi continued, From tomorrow, this place will feel different. Not because I said so, but because we'll be different. And it starts now. She pointed to 4 people. You'll stay. You showed me something real. Honesty, regret, growth. Then she looked at 3 others. You will leave. You were part of a culture that I won't allow. The manager's old seat stood empty. Naomi walked toward it. Then, she kept walking past it. I don't need to sit there, she said. Not yet. She looked at the staff one last time. Make me proud. Or make room. With that, she turned and walked out. And for the first time, the people inside the bank didn't just see her, they felt her. Not just as the owner, but as a leader. 3 days had passed since Naomi visited the bank. But the impact, still fresh, still heavy. Staff now arrived early. No more giggling at the desk. No more whispering about customers. Even the coffee machine area was quiet. No one wanted to be the next to go. But while the staff tried to look busy, something else was coming. Something no one expected. It was a rainy morning. Clouds hung low. The wind made the glass doors shiver. Then, a car pulled up. Not just any car. A black, armored SUV with tinted windows. It didn't park. It waited. The driver stepped out first. Tall, silent, wearing all black. He opened the back door, and out stepped Naomi's father, the real owner of the bank. No one had seen him in years. Most thought he had retired or moved away. But here he was, calm, sharp eyes, silent power. He didn't speak as he walked in. He didn't look around. He just headed straight to the front desk. The new manager, hired by Naomi herself, stood up quickly. Good morning, sir. May I help you? The man smiled, just a little. I'm here to observe. That was all he said. But those 3 words changed the entire day. Because Naomi's father didn't just walk in like a visitor. He walked in like a storm. He sat in the waiting area, watching how the tellers spoke to people, watching how the guards greeted elders, watching how the staff behaved when they thought no one important was near. One man at the counter sighed too loudly when a poor-looking woman came in. Naomi's father raised one eyebrow. The man noticed and turned pale. Another employee offered kind words to a confused customer. The older man nodded slowly. He was taking mental notes. He didn't speak. He didn't warn. He just watched. One employee whispered to another, "Who is he?" Another whispered back, "That's Naomi's dad, the one who built this bank from nothing." That name passed around like wildfire. And suddenly, everyone's back straightened. Phones were answered with a smile. Feet stopped dragging. Screens were no longer used for personal chats. Because they knew This wasn't just about Naomi anymore. This was legacy. This was history walking among them. Around noon, Naomi entered. She saw her father sitting quietly, holding a small notebook. She walked over. "Dad." He looked up and smiled softly. "You made changes." Naomi nodded. "Still making them." He stood and looked at the bank again. "It feels better," he said. "Not perfect, but better." Naomi asked, "Did you see what I saw?" Her father replied, "Yes, and more." She looked around. Staff were pretending not to stare, but all ears were on their conversation. Her father said, "You know what makes a bank strong." She shook her head gently. He answered, "It's not money. It's not buildings. It's people, and how you treat them." Naomi smiled. "I think I'm finally learning," she whispered. Her father put a hand on her shoulder. "You're not just learning," he said. "You're leading." Then he handed her the notebook. It had 5 names. 3 to reward, he said. 2 to release. Naomi took the list. No emotion on her face, just calm strength. And then her father walked out, same as he came, quietly, without show. But the silence he left behind spoke louder than anything. The next morning, the bank staff arrived early again. But this time, it wasn't out of fear, it was out of curiosity. Whispers flew across desks. Is she really the new owner? Was her father testing us? Are we working for her now? No one had the full truth. But something was clear. Naomi was not just a customer. She was someone important, someone powerful. But no one had seen her since her father's quiet visit. Until today. At exactly 10:00 a.m., the elevator doors opened. Naomi stepped out, wearing a calm smile and holding the same small briefcase. This time, there was no manager to stop her. The receptionist stood up fast. "Good morning, Ms. Naomi." Naomi nodded politely. "Good morning." She walked past the front desk and turned, not to a teller, not to the waiting chairs, but to the private offices upstairs. People froze. "She's going upstairs. That's only for executives." The whispers grew louder, but Naomi walked calmly up the marble stairs, like she belonged there. Because she did. Inside the top office, Naomi sat down behind a large glass desk. On the table were 2 files. One said rewards. The other said termination. The staff downstairs didn't know yet, but today things would change forever. After 10 minutes, Naomi pressed a button on her desk phone. "Send them in." 3 employees walked in first, nervous, confused. They were the ones Naomi's father had marked as kind, helpful, and honest. Naomi stood up and smiled gently. "I want to thank you," she said. One of them asked softly, "For what?" "For doing the right thing, even when no one was watching." She handed each of them an envelope. Inside, a bonus check and a promotion letter. Their eyes widened. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say," one whispered. "Say nothing," Naomi replied. "Just keep being good at what you do." They left with trembling hands and grateful hearts. Then came the next 2. Their names were on the termination file. They had mocked Naomi, ignored customers, and lied to cover their bad service. They walked in laughing, thinking it was a regular meeting. Naomi didn't stand this time. She simply opened the file and said, "You both were given chances." They stopped smiling. "I watched you. My father watched you. And sadly, we cannot keep you here." They tried to speak, but Naomi raised her hand gently. "This bank is about people, respect, and care. You failed all 3. She pushed a letter toward each of them. "Your accounts have been settled. Security will walk you out." They were silent now. Angry, shocked, but silent. The same way Naomi had been on her first visit, but this time she was in charge. They left the room, heads down, no words spoken, and the rest of the bank It felt the shift. They didn't see a weak woman anymore. They saw a leader. A woman who didn't shout, didn't argue. She just acted, quietly and powerfully. That evening, Naomi stood in the lobby, looking out at the busy street. Her assistant came and asked, "Ma'am, why didn't you tell them from the beginning who you were?" Naomi smiled. "Because if they only respect me for power, then they respect nothing at all." She walked away slowly. But behind her, a new energy filled the bank. The staff knew now. The woman behind the curtain had stepped into the light, and she was not going anywhere. It was a sunny morning. The streets were busy. People rushed to work, carrying coffee and briefcases. But on one corner of the city, right in front of the tall glass building that used to be called Hilford National Bank, something was different. A big black cloth covered the bank's front sign. People noticed it and stopped. "Is it closing?" "No, I heard something big is happening." Inside, the atmosphere had changed completely. Staff members stood straighter. They greeted people kindly. Even the security guards smiled more. Everyone waited for something. At 10 a.m. sharp, the elevator doors opened again. Naomi stepped out. She wore a white blazer and soft gold earrings. Calm, confident. The assistant whispered, "Everyone's ready, ma'am." She nodded and walked outside. Cameras had gathered. Passers-by stopped and took out phones. The entire staff stood in front of the building, lined up. Then the old sign was slowly removed. People gasped. The new letters glowed in silver and blue. Naomi Equity Bank. Below it, "Strength through grace." A reporter stepped forward and asked, "Ms. Naomi, why rename the bank after yourself?" She smiled gently. "It's not about the name. It's about what the name stands for." He asked, "And what does it stand for?" Naomi looked around. "At first, I thought power was loud," she said. "But then I learned it can be quiet, respectful, and still strong." She paused, then added, "This bank belongs to the people. The small business owners, the students, the mothers, the dreamers." Another reporter asked, "Is it true you were denied service here before owning it?" The crowd held its breath. Naomi looked at the glass doors behind her. "Yes," she said softly, "and that moment taught me more than any business class ever could." Silence fell. Then someone clapped. Then more. Soon, the crowd erupted in applause. But inside the building, something more beautiful was happening. A young woman walked up to the desk. She looked nervous, just like Naomi had once felt. She wore a plain blouse, held a folder close to her chest, and whispered, "I want to open an account." The new receptionist smiled wide. "Welcome. Come with me, please." No one laughed. No one looked away, because Naomi had changed everything. From the name on the building, to the hearts inside it. That afternoon, Naomi sat in her office overlooking the city. Her father walked in. He looked around proudly. "You didn't just inherit a bank, Naomi. You transformed it." She smiled and poured him tea. "I just gave it a soul, Dad." He nodded, and a voice. Then he added quietly, "I'm proud of how you stayed silent when you could have screamed." Naomi looked out the window and replied, "I waited, but I didn't forget." And in that one sentence was the story of her life. She didn't need revenge. She needed change. And now, she had made it real. It was a quiet morning, but something big was about to happen. People walked past the glass building in the city center. The sun hit the windows, and the reflection almost looked like gold, but the sign above the entrance was covered with a large black cloth. No one knew what was going on. A few workers stood outside, whispering. Some were from the media, holding cameras and microphones. A man in a suit asked, "Why is the bank covered up?" A woman replied, "I think someone bought it. Someone important." Inside the bank, the staff stood straight, their shirts tucked in, their ties fixed neatly. The place looked the same, but the feeling inside was different. People were nervous. Even the manager, Mr. Collins, was standing quietly. He looked at his hands, then at the elevator. It opened. Naomi stepped out. She looked strong and peaceful, wearing a white suit with soft gold jewelry. Her heels made a sharp, clean sound on the floor as she walked. No one spoke. They just moved aside as she passed. Naomi walked through the lobby, her steps slow but full of power. She wasn't rushing. She had waited long enough. Outside, more people had gathered. Everyone's eyes were on the covered sign above the bank doors. A man held a rope. Naomi gave a small nod. The man pulled. The black cloth fell. People gasped. The letters underneath were new, shining in silver and navy blue. Naomi Equity Bank. Under it, in smaller writing, power with respect. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the crowd clapped. A few people cheered. A reporter quickly stepped forward and held out a mic. "Ms. Naomi," he asked, "is it true that just a few weeks ago, this bank denied you service?" Naomi smiled, her face calm. "Yes, I walked in through that same door. I waited. I was ignored. I was told this place was not for people like me." Another reporter asked, "And now you own it?" Naomi nodded. "Yes, but I didn't buy it to get revenge. I bought it to change the rules." She looked around at the people, rich and poor, young and old, standing outside the bank. This is not just about a bank. It's about what people see when they look at someone, about who they think belongs and who they think doesn't. Behind Naomi, the employees of the bank stood silently. Some looked proud. Some looked ashamed. Mr. Collins looked at the ground. Then Naomi turned to him. "Mr. Collins," she said kindly, "you once told me this bank was for clients only." He looked up slowly, eyes wide. Naomi smiled. "Let me be clear. From today, this bank is for everyone who walks in with respect." She didn't yell. She didn't insult. She simply spoke the truth. And in that moment, the truth was louder than any scream. Later that day, inside the bank, something beautiful happened. A young mother walked in, holding her child's hand. She wore an old coat. She looked nervous. A teller, one of the same who had ignored Naomi before, stood up and smiled at her. "Welcome to Naomi Equity Bank," the teller said. "How can we help you today?" No laughter, no judgment, just service. That evening, Naomi sat in her new office. The windows showed the whole city. Her father walked in. He looked around the office with soft, proud eyes. "You didn't just take over the bank," he said. Naomi turned to him. "I changed the story." He nodded. "And you changed it without shouting." Naomi smiled. Sometimes silence is stronger than noise. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "And now your silence has a name. It's on the front of this building." Naomi looked out the window again. And in her heart, she knew this was just the beginning. Weeks passed. The city still talked about it. Some people called her the Quiet Storm. Others just said her name with respect, Naomi. But Naomi never let the praise change her heart. She still wore her calm smile. She still arrived early and left late. She still believed in quiet power and gentle strength. Inside the newly named Naomi Equity Bank, everything was different now. People from all walks of life came in. The poor, the working class, single mothers, retired workers, students. They didn't feel judged anymore. They felt seen. They felt safe. One day, a teenage girl named Layla came in. Her hands were shaking. She wore an old hoodie and carried a broken purse. She walked up to the front desk, unsure. I want to open an account," she whispered. The teller smiled warmly. "Of course. Come sit. We're happy to help." Layla looked around. "Really? You're not going to laugh at me?" The teller shook her head. "This is Naomi's bank. We don't laugh at people. We lift them." Layla sat down, her eyes filled with tears. In another room, Naomi watched through a glass window. She didn't interrupt. She just smiled softly and turned back to her work. The bank's website changed too. There were new values written in bold letters. Respect over rank. People before profit. Dignity is wealth. Social media lit up with stories. A man wrote, "Last year, this bank turned me away. Yesterday, they helped me get my first loan." A mother posted, "My daughter was afraid to open an account." Naomi's team treated her like gold. News channels picked it up again. One anchor said, "She didn't just become the boss. She became a symbol." But not everyone was happy. Some of the older board members had doubts. One of them walked into Naomi's office one morning. He spoke in a cold voice. "You're changing too many things. This bank was built on rules." Naomi looked up from her desk. She stood, calm and poised. "I'm not breaking rules," she said. "I'm breaking habits that kept people out." He narrowed his eyes. "This will cost you." Naomi replied with a peaceful smile. "Some prices are worth paying. Some doors are worth opening." The man left. Naomi didn't flinch. On a Friday morning, the bank held a community day. Naomi stood outside the building, welcoming people. Kids ran around with balloons. Music played softly. There were food trucks, job stands, and free financial workshops. Mr. Collins, the same manager who once told her clients only, stood beside her. He had stayed, but he had changed. He now spoke kindly to everyone. He leaned toward Naomi and said, "I didn't see it before. I do now." Naomi smiled. "That's why we're still here." Later that evening, as the event ended, Naomi walked to the front steps alone. She looked up at the sign, Naomi Equity Bank. She whispered to herself, "They tried to lock me out of this building. Now I hold the keys, not to shut others out, but to let them in." She turned and saw the people walking away, smiling, laughing, feeling proud. Not because she was rich, not because she won, but because she made space for them, for people who were once invisible. That night, under the city lights, Naomi sat in her office with the door open. A janitor walked by and paused. He said softly, "Ma'am, I just want to say, thank you. No one ever looked me in the eye before you did." Naomi stood and reached out her hand. Everyone deserves to be seen. And just like that, the woman who was once ignored became the woman who changed the rules. Forever. Years passed. The city changed. The bank changed. And so did the people. But one thing stayed the same, her story. Naomi's name became more than just the name on a building. It became a message. It became a memory. It became a movement. In schools, teachers told her story to young girls. She walked into a bank where they looked down on her. She didn't shout. She didn't fight. She just waited. And then she returned, not as a customer, but as the owner. In offices, employees reminded each other, "Be careful how you treat people. The quiet one you ignore today might be your boss tomorrow." In homes, parents told their children, "If someone tells you you don't belong, remember Naomi. She made her own space. And then she shared it." Naomi never tried to become famous. She didn't want the spotlight. She kept doing her work, quiet, focused, kind. She helped small businesses open accounts. She gave scholarships from her own money. She sat in meetings and spoke with power, but always with grace. She trained her staff not to see people's clothes, but their courage. Not their bank balance, but their dreams. One morning, Naomi didn't come to work. She had passed peacefully in her sleep. At age 68, the city was silent. Then, candles were lit. Flowers covered the bank steps. Thousands gathered, clients, workers, families, strangers. A boy held up a sign that read, "She believed in me before I believed in myself." A woman whispered to her daughter, "You can walk into any room, Baby. Because Naomi did it first. At the funeral, people didn't talk about her money. They talked about her heart. They talked about how she listened, how she made people feel, how she turned a place of rejection into a home of hope. The bank didn't close that day, but it didn't feel like a bank anymore. It felt like a garden that she had planted, and her team promised something at her grave. We will never let this place forget her values. We will keep the doors open for everyone. Years later, a young girl named Amara stood outside the bank. She was nervous. She held a folder just like Naomi once did. Her clothes were plain. Her shoes were old. But as she walked inside, a smiling teller greeted her. "Welcome to Naomi's bank," she said. "How can we help you today?" Amara's eyes filled with tears, because she didn't feel small. She didn't feel judged. She felt like she belonged. And so Naomi's legacy lived on, not just in the building, not just in the rules, but in every hand that was reached out kindly, in every voice that spoke with respect, and in every soul that dared to dream, even if the world once laughed. She didn't just own a bank. She owned dignity. She built hope. And she left behind something richer than money, a world that finally learned how to treat each other better.